Hello. I hope you and yours are safe and healthy. COVID is going around again, and I know a couple of you have had it, so be vigilant. Here in mid-July is when some of us whine a lot. Most of our whining is about the heat and about our gardens. What looks so promising in early May is now being baked by heat and drought or eaten by deer. All the preparation, which crosses way over into micromanaging in my case, seems for naught. Well, as the garden season unfolds, I always have in my head Jesus' story of the sower, who seems not to have read a single gardening book. He seems utterly spontaneous and profligate with his seed, throwing it anywhere and everywhere in a region where fertile soil was at a premium. This carelessness seems especially ill-advised, I think, in such a region. He seems to show no concern for discipline, control, or the odds of the seeds germinating in less than good soil. He just throws it everywhere. Well, the shocker, the eye-opener, the only miracle in this story is that this reckless sower manages to get some of the seed onto good soil, where it produces a yield of like 30, 60, or even 100 times as much grain. A five-fold return to a careful sower would have been amazing, and seven or eightfold was unheard of. Now, this result would have come as a shock to people who had God all figured out. And maybe he wasn't who they said he was after all. Right? Maybe they would have to start thinking about God in a whole new way, which is precisely the point of the story. Why do you speak in parables? Jesus' disciples asked. Well, because the religious know-it-alls think they know everything about who God is and how God works. I'm speaking in parables in an effort to break up the hard ground of their wrong-headed expectations, to loosen the soil for the seed of the gospel. But you, he says to his disciples, you didn't have any expectations in the first place. Your eyes and ears have been wide open to see and hear the wonderful works of God. In other words, the last people you would have expected to get it are the ones who get it. Which says something about how we ought to think about our own ministry, I guess. Often I'm afraid I think of ministry in the same way as I think of my garden. Who would be most receptive to our ministries of outreach or evangelism? Who might most appreciate pastoral care? Who really will jump at a Christian ed offering? Or, labor is scarce and we need to be efficient, use the best techniques in order to maximize the yield on our efforts. It's just the way I go about the work of gardening. But it's almost exactly the opposite of the way Jesus went about his ministry. And the reason for that is that Jesus wasn't doing anything as predictable as planting tomatoes. Right? He was trying to sow the Word of God on the unpredictable soil of the human heart. Not only is it unpredictable, it's invisible. Right? Which means you can't tell just by looking what kind of heart somebody has. So you begin to sow seed everywhere and in every way imaginable. Some people talk to their friends and neighbors quite openly about their faith in God. Others try to show their Christian faith by example. Some folks leave gospel tracts in the men's room, and others perform random acts of kindness. All of these can be ways of sowing seed. A lot of it will fall in places where it never takes root. Some of it will fall in places where it gets a good start, but it doesn't last. Some of it will fall in places where it gets choked out by competing interests. That's just how it is with ministry. Jesus himself could have told you that. But he could have also told you this, that sometimes the scattered seeds of the Word find good soil and grow into a bumper crop. And since you can't predict just how or where the seed's going to fall, or when or if it's going to produce, you just scatter it wherever you can and hope for the best. Fred Craddock tells a story about the time he got a phone call from a woman whose father had died. She had been a teenager in one of the churches he had served as a pastor 20 years before. And he would have sworn that if there was ever a person who never heard a word he said, that teenage girl was it. She was always giggling with her friends in the balcony, passing notes to boys, drawing pictures on the bulletin. But when her father died, she looked up her old pastor, the Reverend Fred Craddock, and gave him a call. "I don't know if you remember me," she started. "Oh, yes," he remembered. "Well, when my daddy died, I thought I was going to come apart," she continued. "But I cried and I cried and I cried. I didn't know what to do. But then I remembered something you said in one of your sermons." And Fred Craddock was stunned. She had remembered something he had said in one of his sermons? It was proof enough to him that you can never tell how the seed will fall or where it might take root. So, as I whine about deer, I need to remember the wildly generous God who sows. The seed has indeed been cast. The truth is that someone was reckless enough to scatter the seeds of the word where we could hear it. Right? God has flung it wide across the land freely, indiscriminately, without regard to the soil. And no doubt some has fallen on us. Perhaps we're not the 100-fold type, maybe not even 60 or 30, but who knows? Maybe amid the barrenness, the thorns, and the rocks of our life's pathways, a seed or two has found some of God's good, deep, rich soil, even in us, and begun to sprout, to put down roots and grow high into the sky. And who can say what our soil is like, or what the seed of God may yet produce in us? See you soon.